The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone. This is the final webinar in our webinar series from this spring and early summer. We are today going to be talking about leading in the family, particularly focusing on emotional self-regulation and caregiving. And as we get started, I'm just going to run through a few sort of orientation to the webinar things. And there we go. So first of all, the system is set up so that you log in through the computer and then you can either interact through your voice and a microphone on your computer, or you can call in, enter a phone key, and then participate over the phone, listening and speaking. If you only use the call-in number, it's not possible for you to speak on the webinar there and actually we can't even tell that you're here because the way it records who's here is through the computer login. So just to let people know that in case you're only joining on the phone. So we're going to practice a couple things. If you would, you should see on your screen there should be a little dashboard that popped up when you logged in. And one of the things is a questions box. So we'll start out by just making sure everybody knows where that is and trying it out by typing in, if you would, the county that you are attending from. And Kate Bailey, who is my colleague, is helping out today with the logistics of the webinar. And Kate, if you would just sort of let me know what you're seeing, and she's going to keep an eye on the questions box. What have we got here in terms of where people are from today?
I'm seeing Douglas County, Benton, Carver County, Olmsted County, Wilkin County. We've got someone from Crow Wing County, Wantawan County. Did I say that right? And Stearns County.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you all for that. That also tells me that you can hear me and that we're rolling well on the webinar here. I first also want to thank Denise, who let me know as we were getting ready, for teaching me a new lesson about the webinar technology. We have when we log on, we have the ability to talk to Kate and I, and the other organizers have the ability to talk to each other, and there's a button that says Start Broadcast that we don't push until we get ready to go. What I didn't know is that when I have my screen shared that you're able to see that. So thank you, Denise, for letting me know, because we logged on, checked to make sure it was all working, and then I was checking some email, which then you all could see. So I apologize for that, and thanks, Denise, for giving me the heads up and letting me know. So now I know that for future reference, too. All right. So the next thing I want to orient you all to is there should be a little button that has a picture of a hand on it. And when you push that, that raises your hand, and it gives us a chance to have spoken interaction. So the questions box will have, you can put questions in there, you can put comments. That's a way to interact. With the hand raising, we can tell, I have the ability then to unmute you. You're all in listen only mode right now, so we can mute all the phones, which we do, all the voices, which we do, so that we don't have a lot of noise in the background since there's a lot of people participating. And we'd love to hear your voices too. So if I'm wondering if you could raise your hand for me, we're going to test the hand raising here. Raise your hand if you have, if you're currently parenting children. And I won't make you talk right now. Great. So I do see that the hands are working. Wonderful. Thank you. So the hands that are up, I'm actually I can lower them now, so I'm going to lower them without doing anything else. And then if you're, then I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you are, actually, I'm trying to lower them and it's not working for me, Kate. I don't know. Let's lower hands. Kate, could you try, please, to see if it's possible for you to lower the hands?
Yeah, I actually tried and am unable to lower them also.
All right. Well, could those of you who raise your hands please lower your hands? There's a feature where you can lower your hands. See if that works.
Oh, Becky, it looks on mine like everyone's hands are lowered, which was why we
Okay.
couldn't lower them.
All right. Well, if they're still showing, oh, there they went. Now, no, they're still showing up on mine, oddly. Okay. Well, we'll have to have you be in charge of that, Kate.
Okay.
All righty. So now I'm going to do a poll. I will, let's see here. Oh, you know what? I thought I had polls set up, but they are not here after all, so we won't do a poll. So if you could then, I need a little more information. Let me know, but raise your hand if you are currently caring for children in a role other than parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, aunt or uncle, another family member. If you would click on your hands and raise your hand to let me know if you're caring for children in one of those roles. Okay, thank you. And finally, if you're a child care provider, if you're providing care for children in a ongoing way, great. Thank you for that. And Kate, would you lower those hands, please? And finally, I'd be interested to know who has been at any of our other webinars this spring. We did several, and I'm looking to see. So a few of you have, great. For you, I will just give you a heads up that there will be some repeated material. That's fine, because one of the things we talk about is the brain science, and we know that whatever we repeat, we get good at and becomes more automatic. So for you, anything we repeat will become more accessible to you and more able to share with others and use in your life. With today's focus, though, we're going to be looking at it from a little bit different angle, looking at it specific to our caring for children and the things we do with children on an ongoing basis. So that'll be today's plan. If you don't already, please, if you would, have a piece of paper and pencil handy, because we will be doing some exercises. I really do like to have this be as interactive a process as possible. We know that as adults, that's how we learn best, and by participating in and the other thing I request is that you try to, as much as you can, reduce other distractions. Very easy, I know, because I've attended webinars too, to do other things while we're doing that. And our world today really tempts us to do lots of things at once all the time. But hopefully you can give your attention to this while we're here and get the most out of it. All righty, carrying on. So we've been talking about leadership in all of these, in all of our webinars this spring, and I just want to comment that it isn't a matter of if we influence others, but how. And essentially, our actions, one of the things that brain science tells us too is that we are constantly influencing each other all the time. Our brains are an interactive organ. And so since we are always influencing others, if we look at leadership as influence of others, is just one way to look at it, this gives us a chance to look at making choices about how do we want to lead in our families. And I will say that looking at leadership in our families is possibly the hardest place because another piece of the brain science is that whatever we have repeated, as we say, becomes automatic. And in our families, we have many repeated, well-worn interactive pathways, habits between us. And those have a lot of strength because we've spent a lot of time in our families and unintentionally, in many cases, creating those automatic responses. So at least my experience and the experience of others I've talked to is that sometimes the things you want to change in terms of your own behavior in your family can take the most effort just because of the sheer strength of those habits and pathways that are there already for all of us. So I asked you all to give a little thought to how you want to lead in your family. And I'm wondering if there's anybody who thought about that a little bit ahead of time that would like to share something. And so I'd love to hear voices if someone would, if you're willing to speak and tell us how what your vision for your own leadership in your family is. That'd be great. If you prefer to type it in the question box, Kate can let us know what pops up there. And Kate, I think I still have a couple of hands that are stuck up for some reason that aren't coming down. So if you could keep an eye on the hands, that'd be great too. So how do you want to lead in your family?
It looks like Denise has her hand up, so I will unmute you here, Denise.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
We can. Thank you. Yes.
I love this technology. I'm at the lake in Hackensack. My neighbor has wireless internet, and I'm in a webinar. This is fantastic, and I'm really excited about this topic. We have a 19-year-old son who is in recovery from an addiction, and I've really had to take a look at how I lead in my family. It used to be, Mom says, then you do it. But through Al-Anon and your courses and things I've learned in my career, I've learned that I have to lead a little differently. And so I need to take care of me and know that I can be okay no matter the difficulties the rest of my family is having. And so I'm really working hard, like you said, to change my habits and pathways and lead my family by example. And so if I'm setting an example and verbalizing what I'm doing as I'm being responsible with my money, as I'm making healthy choices for my body, then I'm hoping that my family is learning through my example instead of Mom says.
Absolutely. There's lots of research that shows that children learn most perhaps by what they see and what's modeled. And that's the stuff we often don't pay as much attention to that we're yeah, so thank you so much, and thank you so much for being willing to speak. The technology is new enough, and some people are shy to do that, and it I think makes a much richer experience when we can hear other voices. So thank you. So Kate, I see Anne's hand too. Do you see that one?
I do not.
Well, maybe I'm gonna unmute in case Anne is. And Anne, if you're unmuted, at Anne Schober, I may not be saying your last name right. If you want to say something, feel free. If not, I will just wait a moment. And while I'm waiting, Kate, are there any other responses in the questions box of how people would like to lead in their families?
Yep, a few just popped in there. One person says, I've had such a hard time finding my parenting style, and thinking about parenting as leadership makes sense, yet also feels strange.
Mm-hmm.
Another person says, oh, that she's typing hers here so that her little one doesn't hear it. And says that she's trying to change the way her family functions. Our family began with Dad abusing Mom. I got out of the relationship, but I didn't have the strength and courage to stand up for myself and care for myself. Right now, we're trying to establish that everyone deserves respect.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
Sounds like a great leadership plan to me, that one.
Mm-hmm. And then Anne typed, with respect from children, and it goes both ways, calmly and respectfully.
Yep. Great. Okay. So going on now, today we're going to do a little bit about our brain science. We've done more about brain science in the previous webinar, so if you didn't attend one of those and you want a little more depth in that, those are available on our website under, let's see, Kate, is it for community and learning opportunities, I think?
Yep.
Is where you can find it. But we're going to touch on it again today, though, just to make sure that we have that piece in connection to what we're going to be talking about. We also have talked, our last year webinar was about self-awareness and self-management as key research-based competencies that really have a strong impact on leadership broadly in all fields. And we're going to touch on that again today because it's really critical to our leading and our functioning in our families. So looking at how we can create new pathways through self-awareness and self-management, and we're going to try to tie it all into what does it mean for you and for the children in your life. This is just sort of a standard disclaimer that a lot of the references to our physiology are simplified for this presentation. We've got lots of resources included at the end of this slideshow, which we'll put most of the slideshow up on the website. A few of the things in it are images I'm using that I don't have permission to reproduce, so those images won't be in the slides that are on the website, but the recording will be, and I'll tell you where you can find those images as well elsewhere. But there'll be, excuse me, resources where you can explore further on your own if you want more depth in any of the things that we're covering sort of in a surface way here. And if you have questions, feel free to contact me. If I don't know an answer, I'd be happy to try to find someone who could answer it more fully. So we're going to start with a little bit about the brain. And a key thing in all of the work that we do is how important the early years are in brain development. And this slide is one I show often. As you look at a brain scan of a 5-day-old, a 2-month-old, a 1-year-old, and a 28-year-old, if you look at focus on the 1-year-old one, which other one does the 1-year one look most like? And somebody can type that in an answer or raise your hand if you'd like to answer. And maybe I should just go on because it's pretty obvious that it looks a lot like, more like the 28-year-old one. And I find that pretty astounding that there's so much development that happens in the first year that a 1-year-old brain scan looks more like a 28-year-old one than a 5-day-old one. So this idea of how important the early years are is really, really, I want to repeat the word important for us to know, because it helps us understand our own experience, and it helps us prioritize our own interactions with small children in
Becky,
a different kind of way. Yeah.
Could you refresh your slide? We're still on slide 1, actually.
Huh. Well, slide 1, like the main slide, huh?
Yep.
Let's see here. Let me just try this and see if that works. Can you see anything different now?
It is still the same slide.
Wow. That's unfortunate. Still the same slide?
Yep.
Let me try pausing my screen.
Oh,
and
there we go.
You know, I paused my screen and I started it again.
Now we can see it.
Okay, no wonder nobody was answering a question about it. We could see it. Thank you for letting me know, Kate. So I'm going to switch to the next slide too and see if it adjusts. Did it switch?
Not yet.
Can you see? Okay, well maybe I may just need to refresh every time.
There we go.
Okay, so this slide shows the synaptic density between birth, 6 years old, and 14 years old. So another real good visual of how much happens during the first years of life. And also looks at this process of pruning. So in the first years of life, we connect lots and lots and lots of neural pathways. And then between 6 and 14, the ones that are not used as often start to prune away. And the ones that are repeated then get wrapped in myelin, become fast and automatic. And for the work we're talking about today, we have known for some time, and many of you I'm sure are aware of the emphasis that we really put on 0 to 3. What I'm thinking is starting to expand to, and there's lots of great resources out of the Harvard Center on the Developing Child, including a new video they've done that really points out, though, how important that even though the early years of life are so critical, the only way that we can really improve how we impact the early years of life are by talking about what are the changes we can all make across the lifespan, that we continue to wire new pathways, we continue to be able to create new pathways as we are older. It's harder, it takes more effort, we have to really intentionally practice, but in the end, small children are with their parents a lot of the time, and so no matter how much emphasis we put into, as we should be, high-quality child care and getting great experiences for kids when they're out of the home in child care settings, that's important. It's also important that we make available to parents broadly supports and information that will help parents, as all of us, make the changes that we want to make so that we can be at our very best in interaction with small children and older children. So one of the pieces that's important about this early wiring, I think, is that it's hard to make changes when we are feeling a great deal of shame. And a lot of times we feel shameful for the things that we, the mistakes that we make, or the things that when we're not at our best in caring for children. And that shame itself can make it hard to feel confident that we can make the change. So when I realized that so many of the things that are automatic for me that don't work the way I want them to, because it's true of all of us, we all have automatic responses that aren't the way we would want to be at our best. When I realized that chances are most of those were wired before I was 3, suddenly I could say, okay, I didn't choose these responses. I didn't choose to automatically wire them. So I don't have to be quite so hard on myself. I can say, okay, this was some part of my environment responded in this way to protect me. Our brain adapts to our environment in order to protect us. And it also helps me understand and have empathy for others when they don't respond in the way that I think I would like them to either. Now that's the compassion side. That's the side where we can give ourselves compassion. On the accountability side, though, also knowing that it is possible to change now is my responsibility to practice. So when you're thinking about your own goals in leadership in your family, the way you want to be in caring for children in your family, and in interaction with others in your family too, because what children serve in other interactions is important as well. I encourage you to hold those two pieces: compassion for yourself, that chances are many of the habits that have been wired you didn't choose to have there, the ones that aren't serving you well, and now you can take action to change that, and you can hold yourself accountable and have others make supporting relationships with others to help you be accountable to the changes you want to make. So a quick review of our brain, and Kate, I did change slides, so let me know if it doesn't change. But I've covered a few of these things already. It adapts to our environment. It's interactive, so pathways are wired in response to our environment, and small children particularly reach out to adults for an interaction. When adults respond, and that then pathways are wired. It takes a lot of energy to build a new pathway. That's why our brain is so conserves energy by wiring automatic responses. It also explains why when we're doing something new, it's hard, because it takes a lot of energy. And we're wired for fear and survival, fight, flight, freeze, and actually a new one I learned recently, faint, are automatic responses that protect us. Cortisol and adrenaline are released to increase strength, stamina, speed, reaction time, and focus, but they also decrease our thinking capacity in order that we will respond automatically for our protection. However, in our current world, there many times our thinking capacity is reduced through that automatic process when we really need our thinking capacity. So some of these strategies are ones we can use to help regain our thinking capacity. And then, as we just discussed, early trauma or early health has a lifelong impact. And so, so the more we can do to impact that, the easier it makes it for future years for the children we're caring for. So this is, oops, I'm thinking I may need to refresh again for you to be able to see this one. This is the first of several cartoons that I've included in this presentation from Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson's book, The Whole Brain Child, 12 Revolutionary Strategies to Nurture Your Child's Developing Mind. It's a book that we've done a book club on and that we've referred some to in other presentations, and it's one that I highly recommend for a lot of the information that we're covering today. And it's also the one where these pictures won't be in the slide presentation that we make available on the website, but they're all in the book. And the book is only about $10, and you can, the paperback version you can get through Amazon, or ask your local library to order it if they don't already have it. But one of the things that I haven't addressed in previous webinars around brain science is how important the idea of integration is. And integration is linking differentiated parts. So our brain has a left side that, as you can sort of see from the pictures, is logical, has to do with words and numbers. And the right side, that's more artistic, has to do with memory. And they have to be able to communicate with each other well in order to function at their best. And the same is true for the upstairs, what Dr. Siegel calls the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain. The downstairs brain that we talked about in terms of that's what's responsible for fight, flight, and freeze. And you need that. And strong emotions, actually there's the mid-brain too. And I've shown you the picture of the handy model of the brain where if you make your hand into a fist, but that is a brain, not a fist at this point. The upstairs part of the brain is where good decisions are made. If you lift it a little bit, you can see the midbrain, which and the brain stem. So the brain stem where our fight, flight, and freeze kicks in. The mid or downstairs brain where big emotions happen. And our emotions give us information, so they're important. We need all of these parts. The trick is getting them to work together, linking the differentiated parts. And early trauma both reduces the differentiation between the left and the right side, between the upstairs, downstairs, and brainstem, and limits the ability for those parts to communicate. So a lot of the strategies we're going to be talking about are ones that help increase that differentiation and integration. And Dr. Siegel not only has this book, The Whole Brain Child, which has cartoons of things you can use with your children and talk with them about it, and also strategies for adults to reflect on your own experience. And then his newest book, Brainstorm, The Power and Purpose of the Teenage Brain. Even if you're not currently in interactions with teenagers, one of the things it talks about is how important some of the things the teenage brain does are for your whole life, for maintaining. And it also has numerous exercises for increasing integration. So if you're looking for specific exercises, specific things you can do, those are great resources. Okay, so this question of what happened to you is one that can really open up for us great opportunities in looking at how do we shift our own leadership. And that piece I talked about, how do we have compassion for ourselves. This is a question you can ask of yourself. This is a question you can ask of others. And it's a shift from a question we often ask of ourselves and others, which is when we see behavior we don't like. We often ask, what's wrong with you? And what's wrong with you gets us into a place of judgment that often is not useful in terms of making change. What happened to you, on the other hand, fits with what the brain science tells us about the impact of early childhood on the life experience, on how environment creates automatic responses. And I'm not usually a big fan of reading off of slides, but I think these quotes are really good. Experience is not fate. By making sense of your past, you can free yourself from what might otherwise be cross-generational legacy of pain and insecure attachment, and instead create inheritance of nurture and love for your children. So one of the things that the research actually tells us is the degree to which an adult has made sense of their own story, has integrated their past, and what the story they tell themselves about their past matters in terms of their relationship with their kids. So when parents get clear on their past, have a coherent narrative about their experience, and made sense of what happened to them, and what may have happened to their parents before them that impacted them, have told their story in this context of what happened and understanding how trauma impacts us and those who went before us, that ability means that kids will have a secure attachment with their parents. That's the primary thing that can predict a child's attachment with their parents or caregivers, whether it's secure or not, is how the degree to which the parents or caregiver have made sense of their own history. And when their kids have a secure attachment to their parents, they thrive. Attachment is a really major predictor in terms of children's health. So it's never too late to begin working on your coherent life narrative. And as you do, your children will reap the rewards. So I'm going to pause for a minute and see if there are any questions or hands or anything else from you all. I kind of whizzed through this, and in a minute we're going to get more interactive again. So what stood out for you? What do you have questions about before we move on? Kate, does it seem like I'm on track with the same slide? You can see the slide that says what happened to you at the top. Just double checking to make sure that's working.
Yep, that's working now.
Also double checking to make sure that people can still hear me. See a couple of questions potentially popping up.
Yep. Someone asked if the PowerPoint's going to be available, and yes, it will be. Someone asked if you could repeat about the Whole Brain Child book. She was just wondering what the book was, so maybe I just answered the question, or maybe you want to elaborate.
I think, well, there's two. There's the Whole Brain Child, and then there's also Brainstorm is the newest one that's about the power and purpose of the teenage brain. And they are also in the last slide in this presentation, which we will send you the slides, although, as I mentioned, the images from those books will be removed from the version that we send you. But we will send you those slides, and it'll have all the resources to those books and others as well.
And then let's see here. We've got a few other comments. The presentation ideas seem to fit the role modeling and self-care goals shared at the start of the webinar. Your statement that it is never too late is very validating for me. I don't want the cycle of abuse to continue to my sons. Someone says, doing good, no questions. Someone says, thank you. I'd like to hear some specific examples of how someone can work through their past experience and create a coherent narrative.
Great.
And then the last comment is about receiving certificates, which I can send them out to everyone afterwards. So.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much. All right, so we, regarding the specific examples of working through past experience to create a coherent narrative, we will definitely we're going to be moving on to some specific examples of how we can, various strategies we can use. I think the best place to look for that question of creating your narrative is the Whole Brain Child book. Has some pieces in it, as does Brainstorm. And interestingly, the Whole Brain Child, some of those activities are focused at helping children create coherent narratives of what's happening to them as it's happening. And many of those strategies can help too. That one may be one I will do a little bit more research on to follow up. That piece is a newer piece to me personally, and I know that it's something that a lot of people, that therapy can be helpful with, and there's, I'm sure, strategies that we can use without therapy too. So I will make a note to look for some other resources that I could send your way on that regarding that question. Okay. All right. So now's the time for your paper and pencil. And we're going to be focusing more on present things. But if you could think of a time when you were at your best in a tough parenting and child situation. I just had an interaction with my son that you may have seen because I'm on camera. He's here with me, and we're starting to sing, which he does often, and I love, but I was indicating that right now I need quiet. So think of a time you were at your best in a tough parenting, child caring situation, and what skills, practices, and or habits helped you to do well. If you would write them down and then raise your hand when you're done. I won't call on you to share them with that particular hand raising. That'll just give us an idea of when everybody is ready to move on. when enough of you, I think probably like when about 2/3 of the hands are up, then I'll move on. All right, I'm not seeing many hands yet. I see a few. So those of you who are still working, that's fine. If anyone would be willing to share the skills, practices, or habits that helped you do well in a time you were at your best in a tough situation, could you please type them into the question box? And actually, Kate, why don't we take down the hands that are up, and then if people are willing to tell us what skills, practices, and or habits helped you do well, that'd be great too. So now if you raise your hand, we're going to interpret it as you're willing to share with us skills, practices, or habits that helped you do well in that situation.
It looks like Shannon has her hand up, so I will unmute you, Shannon. Are you there?
I am. I actually just thought I put my hand down. But
Oh.
I can say a couple of things. I think when I first started these webinars, a kind of big theme, new kind of idea was that taking a pause thing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not a patient person. I can have a bit of a temper problem at times, not really bad temper, but quick, and so I'm like, oh, I really gotta, really gotta work on that taking a pause. But a certain situation had happened with my daughter, and I realized that that was the first thing that I did, is I took that pause, and that was really instrumental in having a positive outcome, even though it was really a difficult situation. So just almost, I instinctively I wanted to probably choke her, but I didn't. I took that pause, and I took time to reflect and evaluate and having patience. So that was like the best thing I could have done, and we worked towards a positive solution.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Shannon. And I will say that we've been talking a lot about pauses, Shannon mentioned, and one of the things I say often is that we take, breathe, counting to 10, taking through deep breaths. That's advice we've given parents and caregivers for years and years and years. And the piece that's new, I think, from the brain science is that that you probably won't be able to do that unless you practice it. That really, because as you said, your instinct, your first instinct, and those things that are automatically programmed, they're programmed to happen fast when you have a strong emotional reaction to something. And so in order to be, so we sort of set ourselves up. And we say, okay, next time such and such happens, I'll take a pause. And we plan in our heads to pause the next time we're in an extreme situation or we're in a very emotional situation. And then when we can't do it or we don't do it, then we're more mad at ourselves. Then we say, why did I do that again? There I went, I did it again. And now we know why. The why is because it's automatically programmed, because we are programmed to automatically respond. That's the way our brain develops. And we can't, and the way to make it possible to do it in those tough situations is to practice it when you're not in a tough situation. So that's the automatic response that becomes more likely to occur. And especially in our families, practicing pausing, and it seems unrelated. Like if you say, okay, I'm just going to stop for 30 seconds 6 times a day. I'm going to set an alarm to do that, or a reminder on my phone or a bell or whatever. How can that be related to pausing in those tough times? But it's kind of amazing to me when I've practiced that, how often when I pause and I don't think I need it, it turns out to be useful. Like I will be running on automatic pilot at work or feeling stressful and not aware of it. And so not only does it turn out to be useful in the moment, that it becomes a habit that is available when I need it most. So thank you, Shannon, for sharing that. Others, what skills, practices, or habits helped you do well in tough situations?
There are a few other comments here in the comment box and also a few hands. So I'll give a few of the comments and then we can maybe hear from someone else. A lot of people talked about active listening, about really taking ownership of the problem, kind of identifying, you know, where it is, if it's with the child, with the adult, or if it's shared, asking that question. People said Incredible Years child-centered theory, where it's more about preserving the relationship and guiding desired behavior than giving a consequence. And then we have, it looks like we have, oh, Faye lowered her hand. She typed in her response, which was also about active listening. And then we have a hand up from Marie. So I will unmute you, Marie. Are you there?
Actually, my hand is down on my end. I typed mine in there because I'm the one with the little kiddo who I don't want to.
Oh, I can hardly hear you there. I'm not sure if it's just me.
Yeah, you're faint. I could hear a little bit. Thank you for telling us. She said she had lowered her hand, and Marie's is, she has typed it in. So since it's faint and hard to hear, thank you for letting us know. We can look at it in the questions as well.
Oh, and Faye had said her hand was up, so maybe we could go Faye here quickly, because it is nice to hear people's voices too. So, are you there, Faye?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. I'm in the office. No, I was just saying that when the incident occurred, I had to use active listening with my daughter because my ex-husband was involved, and so parental wisdom should have been applied, but it wasn't. And so I had to step back and then think about the action that would be in her best interest instead of me reacting to it. And so the outcome was I sought out wise counsel beyond my skill set.
Yeah, supports from others can be very useful, and especially when you can, like you say, step aside and come back to it later and get that support, that counsel from others. We so often we feel that there's an urgency to act immediately and don't make space to seek out wise counsel. So great, thank you for that.
Marie had talked about creating a safe word and having that conversation being really helpful for her and helping her kind of bring down anxiety. So that was kind of a useful tool. And then Sonia says, using skills gained in a workshop, parenting the TCIT way was a big help. It's about consistency, predictability, and follow-through, and using those types of skills. And she says, I can see now today though how my not having my own coherent narrative has prevented me from being more consistent in using these tools.
Great. Well, it's wonderful to hear all these other examples too, which we can, Kate, maybe if we could make just sort of harvest the tools from the questions, the tools that people shared, and include those when we send out the PowerPoint, the certificate of attendance, and the what's the other thing? Oh, survey, the evaluation survey. We can also share in that email the things that you all shared with each other so that you can have reference to those as well.
Sure.
All right. Let's move on. So now we're going to take, just checking the time, we'll take a quick moment, and maybe we won't, maybe if people can just type into the chat box, we'll make this go a little quicker. To just now think about a time you were at your worst in a parenting or child caring interaction, and in that case, what were the habits that got in your way? What were the automatic responses that that sent you in a direction that was away from the outcome that you wanted? And if anybody be willing to just type those into the chat box or raise your hand if you'd like to share them. We won't say your names. We'll just say what we hear. So if that's at all consoling, it makes it easier to be willing to share. That would be, we'll respect that as well. I know for me, I'll share a couple that, and often we find, I find anyway, that once I start to pay attention and notice that there are certain times and instances where I'm most likely to not be at my best, and the more I understand and know what those are, the more I can be on the lookout for them. So in particular, I know that there's a time in the evening when my younger son is when he's tired and I'm tired, we have an automatic interaction habit where I would say that where he will be feeling sad or having some problem, and my automatic response is to try and fix it right away, to come up with solutions, and then he rejects the solutions, and then he's angrier at me, I'm frustrated that he's upset, and so we have the complicating factors are we're both tired. And my automatic habit is to move too fast to solutions without really just like allowing the emotions to be, and it doesn't help. It often escalates the emotions rather than soothing either one of us. So that's kind of I know that my habit of trying to find a solution too fast gets in the way of me being at my best in some parenting interactions.
Becky, others had similar responses. The first one was being overtired. Others were feeling broke, being irritable, using shoulds, being reactionary with anger or disappointment, and not noticing kind of your own stress. When you overextend yourself, feeling too busy to be cognitively present for others. Someone said, you stated resorted to the parenting technique that getting a bunch of responses. Let's see here. Grew up with, which was raising my voice and spanking. Tiredness is not your friend. Being hungry, also a trigger.
I'll jump in with the hungry one just for a moment. There's a great tool that I learned a few years ago that sometimes might be useful to post in your house, and it's the word HALT, H-A-L-T, and you can stand for hungry, angry, lonely, tired. That if you are feeling hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, that can be a good signal to halt, to stop and pause and meet one of those needs before you go further. So I'm getting better and better with my son in the evenings. For example, it's saying, first I'd say, you're tired, you need to go to bed, which of course doesn't get a real, no, I'm not tired. But if I go to, I'm tired, I know I'm not being helpful right now, let's talk about it again in the morning. That allows me to just stop the interaction and take it up again when we're both in a better place, which often in the morning it's dissipated anyway. And he will say, I was really tired too. Then he'll acknowledge it. So anyway, I just want to share that acronym HALT, because when hunger was mentioned too, that's another one.
Yep, and someone else mentioned a specific circumstance when she was feeling really overstimulated and anxious, and saw that same, that impacting her kids and them feeling the same way, and she actually reached out to her mom, who stayed and was kind of like a calm presence, which helped. Someone else says, when I engage in a battle, let him pull me into negotiations. So kind of what you were talking about before of, if you don't have that pause, you can kind of get pulled in, not having a clear sense of boundaries, things like that. Others said shutting down after 10 p.m., anger, trigger is unpleasant, broad-sided, surprise, stress, overwhelmed. A lot of tired and angry. Someone else says being a young parent and not understanding where your children are developmentally. For example, a 5-year-old, she said she hated me and I took it personally.
And the taking it personally thing is something I will comment a little bit more on too, in terms of also how we make sense of our own experience and how we make sense of our past experience and our daily experience. There's a great book that we've been using often. It's not in the references, so I will maybe put this in the notes too. It's called The 4 Agreements. And one of the agreements is don't take it personally. And the premise of the book is that, and I really like this, that we all have our own story that we're living in. And often the way we interact with each other has to, the person mentioned developmentally, we take personally what our children tell us, even though it's a potentially developmental stage. We also take personally how other people treat us. We take personally what may have happened to us in our childhood. And certainly, I don't mean to say it's okay in any sense of the word with the trauma that we've experienced or the trauma that we may have imposed on others. And if we can understand it in a context, and so this is a little bit of to the question earlier about how to integrate our past stories. The more we can understand it in a context of what happened to you, or so for people who have injured us, the more we can understand that that was not personal, that was just like when I am not at my best with my child, it's often some automatic habit that I didn't choose. Doesn't make it okay, but it gives a different way of telling the story. It's not and that's super true in terms of our children too. So even with a teenager as well, teenagers wanting to spend more time with their friends, not being home as much. I mean, that I could take personally too. Why doesn't my son want to be here? Why is he always gone? Right? That's another developmental stage. And if I take it personally, then I get angry at him. If I understand that it's developmental, then I shift and I can say, I really miss you. I wish could we spend some time together. And the same is true for the interpretation of trauma, although they're a little different. But this is about how we tell the story really matters. If we tell it as it's developmentally normal, that shifts how we respond to children. If we tell it as what something happened to them that created this behavior, if we say what happened to them instead of what's wrong with them, it shifts how we integrate what happened to us too, and how we tell our own story. And I think that's a key element of the integrating our own past history in order to have a coherent story and understanding of it. Okie dokie. Is there anything else, Kate, that we should touch on, or anybody else have something they want to say or add before I move on to the next section?
I think we're all set.
All right. Okay. So we've talked some about, and we'll continue to talk, but a really key part in being able to shift to new behaviors is someone said, when I saw or heard in one of the comments, someone said, when I'm not aware of my own anxiety, is really starting to learn and understand and notice as they're happening our own emotional responses. And so emotional intelligence matters because emotions drive thoughts, which drive behavior, which drive action. And often that happens automatically, as we've discussed many times here this afternoon. And oops, Sorry, I had a slide issue there. So what we want to do is be able to really focus on what is the outcome that we want. So some of the tools that people mentioned earlier were when we're in an interaction with the child, if we think about the relationship we want to create rather than a consequence, or rather when we think of each incident that we're in, if we can look at the outcome that we want, that can shift, that gives us an opportunity to make a choice about what we do rather than have it happen automatically. So we're going to just spend a little bit of time again on emotional intelligence, that self-awareness is really important, to know when you're emotionally triggered and know how you react to stress. So when we talked about knowing that when we're hungry, that makes a difference. When we're tired, that makes a difference. There's a whole other step to really be aware of when you're hungry or tired when it's happening. And that's another thing that frequent pauses can help with. If you practice pausing, one thing you can practice while you're practicing pausing is noticing what's happening with me right now. And that practicing noticing what is present, what emotions am I feeling, can help us more often be really tuned into what we're feeling and how those feelings may be impacting our actions. And then self-management is the process of processing our feelings to be able to choose how we want to respond. The third emotional intelligence competency is being aware of others. And that one, in our interactions with children, is noticing when they may be having a strong emotional reaction that's shutting down their thinking capability. So in my example with my son, if I am not tired and I'm more at my best, if I'm self-aware and self-managed, I might notice that he's having a strong emotional reaction and be conscious that his thinking capacity probably isn't working well. So for me to try and engage his thinking capacity at that moment probably isn't going to work. So if I'm aware of others, aware of whether or not I'm having a strong emotional reaction and response, I can choose how I act differently. And then the final competency, and they all build on each other. Some of us are better at other ones of them, but they do. Greater self-awareness allows greater self-management. Greater self-awareness and self-management allow greater awareness of others. And when you have all three of those, your relationship skills, your ability to de-escalate conflict, to inspire and work with others is greater. So just stepping through a few self-awareness tools, knowing your triggers, knowing what triggers you, doing a little experiment on yourself, observation, a scientific observation to learn what kinds of things you respond to with strong emotional reactions. Our body is a great resource for letting us know when we're having a reaction, because often we have physical sensations. Lots and lots of the science is showing more and more how much our emotions in our body and are connected, and how both if we have a knot in our stomach, that can be a sign to us that we're having a strong emotional reaction, and also using our body, moving, can be a great way to process those emotions as well. Knowing if you implode or explode when you're having a strong emotional reaction. And finally, and possibly hardest, is owning that you're triggered rather than blaming someone else. And a real good signal that we're in a reactive place rather than a responsive place is if we notice that we're blaming. And that's kind of a tricky one, because on one hand, someone might have done something that we didn't like, and we want to hold them responsible to that, our child or another adult in our family. And at the same time, if we're stuck in blaming, we're in the what's wrong with you place, and not owning that we may not be in the best place ourselves to process that situation in that moment. So if I'm blaming my son for not listening to my suggestions for how to solve his situation, blaming him for rejecting everything I say, for example, I may not like the behavior that he's rejecting. It's not the behavior I want to cultivate. I might the next day say to him, what can we do differently next time, because he has a part in it too. And if I'm focused on blaming him, I'm not noticing that my own thinking capacity is at its best. And so owning the trigger is simply saying, wow, I am not at my best right now. I don't like what they're doing. You still say I don't like what they're doing, and I am my emotions are strong enough that I'm not able to take the steps to get the outcome that I want right now. So that's what owning your own triggers is about. Recognizing a feeling as it happens is the keystone of emotional intelligence. So we can ask for others to give us a reflection, particularly people that we trust. Here's another tool that a visual tool for those of us who are more visual. If we think of our emotional range as a bandwidth, and when we're within that bandwidth, we have skills to be able to respond. But if we start to notice when we're getting to the edge of the bandwidth, getting close to exiting the band, we don't have coping skills. And so one of the things, I've known families who have used this within their own family to say, as language that they can use. So they can say to each other, I'm not in my bandwidth right now. Let's come back to this later. It can be a useful communication tool. And also knowing that at any point that we apply awareness and notice that we're getting upset about something, that we can turn around the rising tide of stress. And these stars in this one, oops, there you go. Hopefully now you can see it. When we have an emotional reaction, our stress rises. We might have an additional trigger that makes it rise again, but at any point that we notice that we're having a strong emotional reaction, we can help start to turn it around. And along the pause theme, a quote that we use often is that freedom is the ability to pause between stimulus and response, and in the pause to choose. And that freedom is about choice. It's about deciding to take steps towards an outcome, even if we don't know what those steps are. I mean, one thing I will say is that when this challenge of trying new responses when we're in a place where our automatic reactions haven't worked in the past, sometimes means experimenting, trying something new that may or may not have the outcome that we want. In our interactive habits with our family members, the thing is that it requires both parts. So if somebody does something different, it's going to change the whole interaction. And the first thing you try might not work. So that's just something to know that it may require trying some different things. And part of growth is experimentation. Another image is this the first step of self-awareness is to create the pause, to know your triggers, and then choose your response. Self-management makes the pause so that we can have choices as to how to respond. And so just a quick example, if everyone would cross their arms, and if you would notice whether your left arm, or your right arm is on top. And then, once you've noticed, take your arms apart and put them back with the other arm on top, whichever one wasn't on top before. And I'm curious what that was like for you. Oops. Did anyone find the process of putting the opposite arm on top a little awkward?
Yep, it looks, people are saying it felt awkward, like writing with their non-dominant
Yep.
hand, feeling different, feeling uncomfortable.
So it's doable, but it's not. So this is one of those things, a little tiny thing that pretty much everybody. Somebody said I had to redo it and really pay attention to what I was doing. That it feels strange. So most of us, it's one of those things. We've always crossed our arms the same way our whole life. Very automatic. When you do it, you just do it the way you do it. And doing it the other way feels awkward. So I like this example because it's a really practical example where you can see how it's doable. You can put the other one on top, but it really requires attention. And if you were to, I mean, this may not be your top priority to spend the next week crossing your arms the other way, but if you were, you would find that it would get easier and easier the more that you do. So that's the kind of thing that self-management steps are. And so now I want you each to think about what's this WIIFM is the what's in it for me radio station. What are new habits that you want to practice? What do you want to be able to do in tough situations? And if you would be willing to share those, raise your hand or type them into the chat box.
It looks like Denise has her hand up, so I'm going to unmute you here, Denise. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right.
I was thinking, okay, what's in it for me? And then you wanted us to say what's something we want to change?
Yeah, so what is a new habit you would like to create in your parenting?
Calm. I would like to create a calm habit. So I tend to, like you said, jump into action or throw blame instead of just staying calm and saying, what's your plan?
What are some times that you do feel calm already? When does calm come to you?
Well, right back to those same triggers, when I'm fed, when I'm rested, when things in my own view of my own life are content, then I'm more calm to help other people deal with their problems. This
Brings to mind for me the work of Dr. Rick Hansen, and he has a book called Hardwiring Happiness. And I'm not sure if I have that in the resources or not, so I'll check and add it if I don't. So his name's Dr. Rick Hansen, and the book's Hardwiring Happiness, and he suggests that practicing noticing, so in what you're talking about, practicing noticing calm, and really our brain is wired to be sticky for the negative. And I think they say like Teflon for the positive and Velcro for the negative. And so around cultivating calm, one thing you could do is practice really noticing when you are calm. So if you say when you're rested, when you're fed, if there are other environmental things that help with calm for you, I mean, like I sit in my backyard and the breeze is blowing, it's very calming for me. So that's a way that you could practice and cultivating more calm, so it's more available to you in the tougher situations. Are there other things that for you might be reminders of calm, or might be ways that you could intentionally create calm?
Well, taking a walk is for sure something that's calming. So if I get my walk in every day, I can deal with things more easily. Like you said, the weather makes a big difference. All those rainy days,
yeah,
to make you feel agitated, like there's so much stuff that's not getting done. So the weather makes a big difference for me too. But yeah, the backyard, the hammock. So I can't manage my whole life from the hammock though, so I have to figure out a way to simulate that calm.
Well, one thing you could, just brainstorming, you'll find your own things that you want to do, of course, too, but even sometimes you could like put a photograph of your hammock up on your wall wherever you work, or someplace that you, it's sort of a visual reminder and a way to even just take a few breaths and call to mind that those things that cultivate calm for yourself, as a way to practice it and develop more of it. But the interesting thing is the science is kind of amazing. Dr. Richard Davidson out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, who's a neuroscientist, has shown that you can practice kindness, you can practice calm. We know that athletes have to practice to get good at what they do. We know that musicians have to practice at what they get good at to get good at what they do. We know you have to practice reading to learn to read, but we have not given as much attention to practicing emotional habits that we want to cultivate, and you can do that. That's the exciting thing about this. For me, I get real excited about this idea that you can even practice these more seemingly intangible things can be cultivated with practice as well. Anybody else have something they want to add?
Becky, others said active listening, recognizing more quickly where I'm at and what I need to do to control myself. So some self-awareness and self-management. The pause. Someone said, I explode too often. That's my instinctual response. The alternative seems to be implosion and feels like a very painful alternative too. So she wants to choose calm, but she doesn't know where all that energy would go. Others said meditation and prayer.
So I encourage all of you to actually pick something. I mean, one of the things about learning, adult learning, is to you make a commitment to yourself about something you want to practice, say, for the next 6 weeks. Some of the research also says that a new habit takes about 6 weeks to do. And know that it'll feel awkward at first, like the wrong side of the arm. Regarding the person with about energy, I will also say that that one of the suggestions for kids, for working with kids in the Whole Brain Child book, is about moving it, move it to process it. And physical movement can really, really be a great way to process the energy that comes with emotions sometimes. And certainly implosion is not a better way to respond than explosion. I think one of the things with there's a great story about emotions that someone came upon a man on a horse and asked him, where are you going? And he said, I don't know, ask the horse. And with emotions, we can either let them carry us away, which could be explosion. We can stuff them, which I think I'm sure that we have all had the experience of being with someone who's having a strong emotional reaction who has imploded, and that has as big an effect on the people around you as explosion does. It's a different effect, but it still has a strong impact on the others. So we can be carried away by them, we can stuff them, or we can use them. And so that third way, though, is very awkward. It takes practice, the third way. And one way to get at that is to think about what is it I'm needing, because usually emotions are they're information that tells us that either a need of ours is being met. So the emotions we think of as positive are often emotions that when our needs are being met. So if we're like, I'm feeling content today because my need for interaction is being met, because you all are talking on the webinar and you're giving your feedback over the chat box. My need for connection is met. I don't feel like I'm just speaking into my computer in my dining room by myself, which would feel awkward. So I'm feeling content because my need for connection is being met. When you have a feeling when your need is not being met, identifying what that need is. You know, if you're having, it may be a need for peace and ease. In the tough times I have with my son, a need I have is to contribute to his well-being. And when I'm getting stuck, not able to contribute to his well-being, I get frustrated, I get angry because my need to contribute to his well-being is not being met. I'm not succeeding at that. So I just offer that as a way to think about the implosion, explosion question. A third way out is to try and say, what am I feeling and what am I needing? Because when you get to what you're needing, then you can potentially come up with other strategies to address that need. All right. So this is a piece about why practice happens, because when a trigger happens, we only have about 10 or 15 seconds to stop the flood of cortisol and adrenaline that happens with a strong emotional reaction. Now, there's a range, like the image of the emotional bandwidth. You know, we can have a small emotional reaction that will not have as big of an impact on our thinking capability, so just to be aware of that. But it's only about 10 to 15 seconds, so that's why being aware is so important. And it takes about 5 or 6 hours to recover completely. That doesn't mean you've lost your mind completely for 5 or 6 hours, but it means that the chemicals are still in your body and you're not back to your, you know, your baseline best self probably. So that's why it's so important. And as we talked about before, at any point you can turn it around. And actually, I realize I haven't been doing the, have my slides been changing? I haven't been refreshing my screen.
We are on
And
Rollo
right now what I
May.
have up is, you're on what? Rollo May still. Okay, so sorry. I'm going to bring you up to where I've been. I've been talking without your visuals. Apologize for that. So these are some self-management tools. So if you all think about you all probably have some that work for you, so that in those moments when you want a different strategy, you have some, I'm sure, that work for you already. Here are some that could be used. If you're aware that you're having a strong emotional reaction, hopefully now you're on the self-management tools slide, and if I'm not, Kate, you can let me know, but otherwise I'll assume you are. Focusing on your breath, lots of research about how just noticing your breath coming in and out can help bring you back to be a self-management tool when you notice that you're having a strong emotional reaction. Practicing mindfulness, which is just noticing what's happening in the moment. Keeping the end in mind. I'm skipping down a little bit. I know you all can read these. Oh, and the flipping your lid one I want to show you. So we talked about the hand model of the brain earlier. I'll use that with kids, but even just a visual model, say, wow, I flipped my lid. My upstairs brain has disengaged. And consciously thinking of having your upstairs, re-engaging your upstairs brain, your thinking brain, to help give your downstairs brain a hug is an image we can use with kids, but even just say, oh man, I flipped my lid. I need to bring it back down. So a visual, sort of a way of telling the story, a way of explaining it, again, in the moment, can help make sense of it and help get you back on track via self-management. What are some other things that you all use that aren't on this list that work for you to be a self-management tool when you're aware that you're having a strong emotional reaction? Some of the things people mentioned earlier, meditation, prayer, brings calm, things like that are also one that I haven't said that I learned and was interesting is pets. That spending time with your pets can help people self-manage. All right, because we're getting near the end, I'm going to keep going. Here's another one from Dr. Siegel. That he is the Wheel of Awareness, and he's lots of books. Mindsight is another one of his books, and this tool, the Wheel of Awareness, comes from his concept of mindsight, which is to have this calm, receptive center, which is the hub. And all around the hub are all kinds of things, and when we focus on any one of those parts of the wheel, it may it pulls us away from our hub. So the image on the right is, oops, maybe I didn't refresh. Let me do that to be sure you guys can see this. Usually this does it automatically, but for some reason today it's not. So that in the book, Whole Brain Child, he tells a story of someone named Josh who's caught up in the dread of getting a B on a test. And the idea is that if he comes back to his hub and looks, he can imagine all the many other perspectives and things that could be out there. So again, it's about, when we talked about integrating our stories, this is a way you can practice in the moment how you tell your story, what you focus on. And so when you come into the hub, you can say, oh, there's a dread of getting a B, there's a worry about a band solo. There's also a desire to have fun and relax, and remembering, oh yeah, I play music because I love it, and I like hanging out with friends, and sort of bringing yourself back to a center and noticing many possible perspectives, many things, your thoughts, your feelings, your dreams, your body sensations, can be a tool to get back to self-manage and to get away from being stuck in one particular perception, perspective, or feeling. So there's a lot more about this if you want to explore it further in the Whole Brain Child book. It's also in the Brainstorm book, and there's also a whole book called Mindsight. So lots of options for that one. We've talked about practices, and we also talked about what you want to intentionally practice so that it becomes more automatic. So I will go on to the next slide. I mentioned earlier, but I will think again about this idea of, so we talked about self-awareness and self-management in terms of emotional intelligence. I just want to touch again briefly on this awareness of others piece. And it's sort of related to the what happened to you versus what's wrong with you question, or what's happening to you versus what's wrong with you, is that often when somebody's acting out in a way that we don't like, they themselves are having a strong emotional reaction. And if we can remember that, if we can remember that they are probably feeling threatened in some way and having a protective reaction in their brain, it's a way of explaining it that opens up possibilities for a different kind of response. Especially if we know and one of the things that in this case about the pause that's interesting to me is if I know that when I'm reactive I need a pause, and if someone else is reactive, I can say I'm gonna step away for a little while and I will come back so that we can have a little space to process this emotion. And it varies how much time that needs, depending on the size of the emotion. Actually, there's an image I don't have in here that I like. It's a red circle with a yellow circle in it with a green circle in it. And sort of in the green, we're good to go. We can process difficult things. In the yellow, we might be getting close to the edge of our bandwidth, and we might need to step away for 5 minutes or take a few breaths. That's a little bit of a breather. In the red, we have either ourselves or the other person that we're in a conflict with may have had such a strong reaction that we might need to give it 20 minutes or so, or even come back to it the next day, depending on how strong a reaction it is, to let it settle to come back to it. So this is one of the examples from the Whole Brain Child book, again, of 12 revolutionary strategies to nurture your child's developing mind. Many of them I think are great for kids and great for us as adults. This one is the cartoon that comes before it is, instead of just dismissing the feelings, try to connect and redirect. So in this case, the child says, "Mom, you never leave me a note in the middle of the night, and I hate homework." Having a difficult, and the connect and redirect method says, "I get frustrated at things like that too. You want me to leave you a note tonight?" So focusing on the feeling, connecting to the emotion, and then rather than solving it, say, "I've got some ideas about homework, but it's late. Let's talk about that tomorrow." So not try, again, this is a good one for me to learn. But I think it's true of us as adults too. If we, in our interaction with other adults in our family and other adults in our lives, if we remember to connect to the emotion, and if we can, make space to come back to the problem solving when we're in a better place, that's another great model for our children, a great way to lead.
Hey, Becky.
So, yes.
I think we are one slide behind you here.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Oh, right, thank you so much. I'll go back and show you that when I was talking about it, but you didn't get to see it. Maybe I will. There we go. There you go. So that's the one I was just showing a moment ago, and again is in the Whole Brain Child book. I sometimes feel like I'm a salesperson for that book, but it's a really good one, and lots of great strategies, and also addresses this question of how do we as parents integrate our own stories, is woven into it. So it's it really addresses that question I talked about at the beginning of how do we both give the best to our kids and as I think maybe Denise spoke at the beginning too, someone spoke about how important caring for ourselves is too in this equation, that we often as parents go to self-sacrifice, and that can really undermine our ability to be our best. And so this piece of self-care is really important as well. Okay. All right, so we are at the end here, and so I'd just like to hear from you all. How do you think this will impact this information and thinking about managing your, learning how to be more self-aware and self-manage yourself, learning how to integrate your story, and understanding how the brain science connects to this, practicing new habits? How will this impact your interactions with the children in your life? And to the question of integrating your past, how does it change how you tell your own story? Have you, as you've been doing this, I'm guessing many of you may have been reflecting on your own experience, and does it alter at all the way you think about your experience as a child, your experience as a parent? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as we wrap up. So please feel free to type an answer or raise a hand if you'd like to share.
Becky, we have one comment that says, good reminders, I'm going to buy a couple of books.
Another thing I will say about the Whole Brain Child is it is very easy to read also. It makes it very accessible. It's not a tough read, so that's nice.
We have another comment that says, I'm going to practice the pause and also try to implement that into my parenting.
Mm-hmm. Great. I don't know if I switched my screen for you all in that.
Someone else says, it gives a fresh perspective and new skill set, and I need the book. And reminders, I think it will help me refocus on self-care and interactions.
So one other thing as we wrap up that's also on this same slide is I'd also encourage you to think about something from this that you would like to share with someone today. What is something that you heard today that you would like to tell to someone else? But also, that's another thing that we know about adult learning, that we lock it in when we share it. So that has a double bonus. On one hand, our work at Minnesota Communities Caring for Children and Prevent Child Abuse Minnesota, really our hope is that the information we share, you all will pass on to others, and that you will all be partners with us in sharing the information and the practices that will help us all create environments where all children thrive, because environment is so important to our development and our lifelong health. So we hope that you'll pass it on, just if only just to spread the word a little further and get this information to more people. And also, when you do, it helps you retain it. It helps you retain the learning. It helps make it more available to you for use in your own life. So hopefully you'll think of something and you'll share with someone, and who that person will be, and jot that down for yourself right now so that you have a commitment to follow through. And with that, I'm happy to entertain any other questions. I will move the slide forward to the resources slide at the end so that you can see that, but also know it'll be in the slide set that was sent out. Any other questions or comments anyone has would like to make at this point? If not, thank you all for being here. This is the end of our current webinar series, but we will for another one in the fall. These are all available on our website, both the slides and the webinars, the recordings. You don't get to see me, but you do see the slides and hear the audio on the recorded version. So feel free to let other people know that too. And thanks so much for being here. Do hope you will complete the survey. We'll send out a survey either later today or tomorrow to get your feedback on what worked and what didn't with this webinar as well. We want it to be we want future ones to be as good as possible, and we rely on your input to help that happen. So thanks. I don't know if are there any last questions in the chat box?
Nope, just a lot of thank yous.
Okay. Oh, Shannon says the resource page isn't showing. Thank you for reminding me again there. I refreshed it, so it should be there. Okie doke. Well, I will leave that up for a couple of minutes till everybody's gone. And I'll stay here too till everyone is signed off in case there are any additional questions or comments.